Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another 50 Acres Academy webinar. Today's webinar is on how to organise and publicise amazing events. My apologies for moving this by a day. So I think a couple of people haven't been able to join us today, but I unfortunately had to be in Sydney for a day's training yesterday. So my apologies for that. But welcome, and I'm hoping that everyone is having a good week as we're drawing towards the end of the year. So let's get going. If you have any questions, don't hesitate popping them into the box, and I'll get to them as they arise. So just write something in the box, and we will get to them as you ask them. So what we're talking about today is how to organise and publicise events. Obviously, I was thinking this is particularly topical as we, a couple of things, I suppose, as we're drawing towards the end of the year. People often have gatherings that are driven by, a need for, to publicise a particular cause or to bring in money for a particular charity or organisation. So I thought this is a particularly topical thing to be looking at the end of the year, which is hence why I did it. So let's move on. What are we going to cover today? We're going to look at how to create events on a range of budgets and think about what you need to factor in terms of budgets, because that's one of the things that often gets out of control. Key event, some key event checklists that will really come in handy in terms of, what you're needing to think about. It's always really important because if you're, not organised, things just fall apart, and I'm sure you've found that out before. Various tools to help promote your event, some thinking around PR and publicity, but also just communications broadly, because fundamentally, events are about trying to get people to come along. And yes, publicity is important. That can often bring in other supporters to your particular cause or, customers for your business or whatever it is. But fundamentally, the success of an event is having a successful event itself. So we'll think about that as well. And the best event management apps and some platforms that you can use to, get your ducks in a row. There's lots of options out there. I've got some recommendations of various platforms that I think work well, but there are a lot of them, and there's also a lot of free tools available online. So we'll have a think about all of those as well. So, fundamentally, we all know events are a great way to promote your organisation or charity or business, build awareness, in your brand, or in a particular person that might be pivotal in that, in that brand or organisation, or a particular campaign, or just maintaining goodwill. I'm organising an event for Christmas in December here in Canberra for clients, staff, and friends of the agency, and we're having a great, lovely, small Christmas lunch at a ice cream laboratory. It's called Mr. Frugi. If you are in Canberra, you'll know what I'm talking about. And I think I am a frustrated wedding planner because I love curating events like that. So I've got little calico bags that are like Santa sacks, and I've sort of stuffing them full of fun things that I've identified from Etsy. And I'm sure some of you know Etsy, but it's a global handcrafted marketplace that you can get things for giveaway bags at events. But maintaining goodwill is a great thing to do as well. If you don't necessarily have to have a huge driver for an event at the end of the year, Melbourne Cup, Easter, Christmas, If you're in the States, there's lots of options for celebrations, bringing people together. Summer, Christmas in July, there is, you name it, there is lots of ways of bringing people together that you can use. Halloween, you could use anything as a trigger, and leverage that for your organisation. And I think that's a reasonable thing to do. Someone said, hello from Wagga. Hello from Wagga. What's an event? An event, can be as small as, a small gathering of, an intimate luncheon, for half a dozen people, through to an event for thousands, really depending on what you're trying to organise. So, whilst we haven't organised events for thousands, we've organised events for hundreds, and it's been, but we've equally organised much smaller events, and all of them need to be planned and curated well to be able to succeed. Thinking about the creativity that goes into it, through to, everything in between. And, yes, a big event, you can get, bleary-eyed and tired and exhausted, but you still need to have the attention to detail that you have when you have this sort of leisure of having a smaller event, which is sort of seemingly, important to or easy to organise. But equally, it's important for that small event to go off really well. So, thinking about the dynamics of the interaction of the people, who are there, who who's going to be seated next to who. It's almost like a wedding, in some respects. The smaller events, the bigger events, people interact as they will, as they do, but there is a lot of attention to details required for both of them. So, fundamentally, the first thing to think about is, what type of event are you actually running? Is it a for-profit event? Even if you're a not-for-profit, you can be wanting to make money, and that's often the driver of an event, is to not just gather people together and illustrate your cause, but actually to bring in some, much-needed funds, which is always a good pivot point for an event. Break-even events, sometimes it's just a loss. It's a loss leader, effectively. You just really want to get it out there. You want to promote what you're doing. You're activating a particular cause, a particular issue, and that's what you're doing. But it's important, obviously, not to lose money if you're a company or if you're an agency, if you're not for profit. Hosted events, they can be, anything from lead generation, or as a thank you for, it's a Christmas event, or as a celebratory event, through to promoting a cause or an issue. So, first of all, think about what it is that you're doing. In terms of budgeting effectively, the sort of things that you need to start to give some thought to before you get going with this, really, is, marketing projections and estimates. How much is it going to cost to put this event on and promote? Look at the history of previous or similar events. How much did it cost in the past? And you can learn from that and not lose money. If the economy is particularly good at the time, and there's high demand, the budget might increase if you know that you're going to have a lot of people coming through the door, a lot of ticket sales or whatever it is. If it's not, the way you can save money in terms of budgeting is to bargain with your suppliers to cut their prices. We're involved with a large community music festival here in Gundaroo, and it's been going for it was the third year this year, and it was in response to one of the parents at the local school who developed motor neuron disease. So there was a festival created in his honour, but the money is going to research for motor neuron disease, to the Motor Neuron Foundation. each year it's got bigger, but with each year, I think it was 5,000 people who attended this year, and about $60,000 was pulled in each year. With that increased number of people through the door, there's an increased demand for service provision, utilities, toilets, security. So the costs come with that expectation of increased numbers. There's an expectation from the community or your participants that there is going to be increased numbers, but also that brings risk as well. So these are all the things that you need to have a think about, even if it's, you're scaling up an event from 30 to 100. There's always things to be thinking about in terms of, is that the right thing to do? Do you need to do that? Is it better that you stick it around that 50 and make it really successful? Or do you really need to be in that huge hall and you're not sure whether you're going to get the people in the door? And it's going to be, there's going to be, it'll be quite vacuous, and people will be able to hear their voices, bouncing off the ceiling because there's not many people there. So it's about the trade-off of making those sorts of decisions at that earlier time. And these are some of the things you need to think about in terms of early on, and in terms of what that does in terms of reflecting on your budget. ROI, return on investment, expecting to make a return on the event. Or is it a loss leader? It may very well be a loss leader. And that's absolutely fine. That's a very normal thing. A lot of charities, organisations, local government, whoever they are, small companies, large companies, have loss leader events. It's a very important part of a marketing strategy. To gather people together, and to give back to them, to say thank you. And it's a kindness. It's a mark of your generosity. It's an opportunity to talk to people in a lovely, convivial way, rather than just always talking to them in a formal way. However that relationship is, it's not a monetized engagement on that particular occasion. It's just really literally bringing people together. And so a loss leader event can sometimes be a wonderful thing for your brand. Event financing, where will the money come from? Do you need to wait for sales? Do you need to wait for a benefactor or some sort of philanthropic donation to be able to get it off the ground? Or is there a budget allocated to be able to kick off arrangements and organisation? Because you do need some money to drive the event and to get things going. You just can't gather all these resources from nothing. Suppliers won't supply you. They've been there before. So they, often will need some of the times will need some payment in advance, or you need to be able to make sure that you can pay them, obviously. So these are some of the things you need to have a think about. How best to budget? Now, there's a number of ways, and it's easier said than done, but, it's easy to say shop around, but, sometimes you may be in an area, wherever it is, if it's in Sydney or Melbourne or Wagga or Gundaroo or wherever it is, and that, John or Mary up the road has always had the coffee cart, and, they've done it for the last, 3 years, and off you go. But there might be someone cheaper, better coffee from somewhere else. So I'm not saying that you necessarily cut those suppliers off just for the sake of it, but always be open to looking at your suppliers. And, if it's an event you're setting up from scratch, it's green pastures. Go out there and see what you can find. And I think often if you say to someone, look, X is saying that they can do it for 300, you'll get prices that will be matched quite easily. So, negotiate with suppliers. It's not something that they're not used to. You'll get a sense of what the best price is, and by getting those quotes from a range of vendors, it allows you to get them to compete if needs be. If you're flexible, you can often achieve really good results for a lot less money. For example, if you want, a particular event on Australia Day, maybe it's going to be cost prohibitive, but if you did it a week later, uh, it'll be a lot cheaper. Be flexible about dates, be potentially flexible about location. More flexible you are, the better likelihood you are of making some cuts to the budget and savings. Tap into your network. It's amazing if you really look and think how many people that you know that can help you with an event, whether it's just staff, volunteers, people who are security people or ticket sales, or can provide beverages or food or whatever it is. A bobcat, a tent for the whatever it is. There's a whole plethora of people out there who do stuff, and you've just got to put out the feelers about who in your networks does that stuff. Use technology, and we'll get on to this later in terms of some of the great platforms that are out there. There is so many platforms to be able to tap into. There is no excuse, I think, to say for not being organised with an event. There is so many different options, from just your Excel spreadsheet or Word document through to something that is much more complex. There are free platforms, there are paid platforms, and it's just about a matter of finding the one that suits you. So now getting prepared, a to-do list. This is a creative, arty to-do list, and mine often doesn't look like that, but obviously we need to have a think about what else we need to do. What are the other things you need to factor in? Venue costs include rental, staff and security, food, beverages and staff to serve those the beverages and the food. They may be volunteers, they may be people that you have to pay if it's a huge event. So clearly, you need to sit down and go, okay, we're going to have 1,000 people there. How many people do we need to staff? Adequately. That dinner, that lunch, that whatever it is. If it's 200, what do we really realistically need? You may not necessarily know if you've not done it before, but you can have a best guess at it. And I think the best thing to do is probably overestimate rather than underestimate. There's nothing worse than having 100 people somewhere, and you've got all the food in the kitchen, you've got the diligent people having cooked the food and it's all ready to go, but it's sitting there, you've only got 2 people to serve it and it's going to get cold. So think through some of the logistics about how you manage that stuff. Equipment rental, including chairs, tables, toilets and tents. There's no end to the amount of stuff that you can rent for events, whether they be small or whether they be large. There are companies that do it, but some of the stuff you can actually find from family and friends. You often can't find toilets, but you can find a lot of the other stuff: chairs, tables, etc., etc. Design and printing costs. It depends on what you're going to do. Do you need posters? Do you need to mail a hard copy invitation to people? Is there a flyer that you need to produce to hand out at other locations to gain interest in your event? So you need to think about having enough time to factor in the design of those collateral items, getting them to the printer, making sure they're printed in time, and moreover, that they're distributed. There's nothing worse than having all this great stuff sitting there in the office and it not getting out. If it's not distributed, it's not effective. Postage and shipping costs. So, we need to mail the stuff out. Again, you can print invites, cards, flyers. You then need to get them out. You need people to put them into envelopes to get them out. You need to pay for those costs. Transportation costs, if depending on how far your event is and what you need to get there, you may need to get food, other supplies to this event. There'll be costs associated with that as well. audiovisual and entertainment costs. And you can start cheap, and you can, sky's the limit with this stuff. So, you know, I referenced the Gundaroo Music Festival. When we first started, it was, you know, obviously we had a stage, we had Auntie Jack. Some of you may not know who Auntie Jack is, but you know, it's a very mixed sort of semi-rural audience. And you know, these last 2 years we've had big screens. This year we had more screens. So you know, each year it gets bigger and better, and there's no limit to how much you can spend on audio and visual costs. So you need to think about what you really need, because in terms of a loss leader, this is where you can really make your loss, because there's a lot of companies out there who are very happy to take your money in terms of audiovisual stuff. So, you know, I think it's important to go, to think through really, what do you need, what's important, how slick do we want this event to look? If you want it to look slick, you need to invest in it. Do you need to have a big widescreen? How much is that going to cost? Can that be covered with the ticket sales or the budget that we've got allocated? You need to examine all of those things. Publicity and advertising costs. So, is that, something that you've got staff to do that, or can you get some volunteers to help you, or the people that you're going to outsource that to? Advertising, again, is a phenomenal expense if you want it to be. It can be anything from, getting it out there on social media for free through to paid ads on social media on all of those platforms that you can advertise on. You can also advertise on radio, online. So there's really no limit to where you can go with that. And again, you need to make some assessments about whether you need to do it and how much you need to do of it and what it's going to cost you and what the payoff is going to be. And office expenses, the admin costs of getting this stuff done. You may need to engage, someone to help you with it for a short period of time if it's a really big event. It might be that it's deploying, one staff member or two staff members for something. On Monday, I spent the day in Sydney media training with White Ribbon, and I was there all day. And they've got 20 staff, and they're doing thousands of events and activities in the next week. It's extraordinary. So there's a lot of stuff that they're involved in, and that's an issue that they're active in all year. But these last few weeks before the event itself, it's really all hands to the deck. It's all hands to the pump. They're just all doing it. No one's not doing White Ribbon Day stuff. It's next week. So, you've got to think about that in terms of your own logistics internally within your own organisation or company, making sure that you can actually manage it. So, getting started, where do you go? You need to think about informing local, state, federal government of the event and gain approvals if they're required. Check to see if there are other events scheduled for the same date and location, and prepare an event budget and plan and monitor your spending. It's really important. It's a bit like a wedding. I can remember with my own wedding, I started with a, X budget, and, like most events, a lot of the time budgets are blown. So if you really can't do that, you really have to be very strict with making sure that you don't blow your budget. There are lots of free downloadable templates, budget templates online, to make sure that you stick to that budget and you're monitoring it all the time in terms of every cent. Initial logistics. The first thing really is to select a location or the venue for the event. Think about transport. Will people be travelling long distances to your event? Is there parking and easy access from public transport? When is the location available? You might have it in your head that you want to do Sunday. It might not open on Sunday. When are you going to do it? What works? Develop a timeline, an event timeline, and use some sort of checklist or a spreadsheet to monitor tasks. Book your entertainment and MC if needed, and get written confirmation from them, and submit a deposit. Give them a deposit for their services if you need to. Create a sponsorship plan and identify potential sponsors, and do that early. There's no point in trying to get in on that late because, you're going to look desperate, you're not going to get as much money, you're not going to have as much engagement. The point of getting a sponsor is to, A, get their support financially, but also, activate their networks in that process. Apply for the permits. You might need a noise permit or a request for approval to erect promotional signage. And apply early for road closures if you need them. I was driving through the city in Canberra on Sunday, and there was a procession of a number of churches. It was an ecumenical procession through the suburb of Manuka, which is sort of an inner city suburb in Canberra. It was in response to the Paris attacks, and there was police and council, and they'd obviously had to get permission. So even if it's something that you do quite quickly, you still have to think about permissions. We organise a lot of events that start or are pivoted around Parliament House, and there are lots of authorities there that are involved. There's 3 or 4 different authorities that you have to get permission from. The Speaker, the Sergeant at Arms, the Australian Federal Police, the ACT Police, the security at Parliament House. It's very complicated, and you have to get permission from all of them in order to organise an event. If you don't have it, they'll shut you down. So, don't overlook that one. Don't overlook the permissions. Make sure that you've covered it off, and that might just be a call to the police. It might be, unless you're organising a protest, and that's a different thing, and then the police will arrive and you have to talk to them, and that's perfectly fine too. We live in a democracy. I completely support protests. But if it's an event that you want the cooperation of the authorities for, then you need to think about approaching them in good time. So stuff you might not have thought about: contractors, risk management. If it's big, what's going to happen if something goes wrong? Security, which ties into risk. Essential services. Do you have water? If it's a hot day, do you have some free water in a tank? Or how are you going to provide people with water? Are the toilets? Who's going to service them? Where's the waste going to go? The rubbish, the toilet waste, etc., etc. All those things have to be thought through. With Gundaroo, a whole lot of people from the town, the village, go, the next day at 8 o'clock in the morning. There was Angry Anderson singing at midnight the night before, and a whole lot of people descended on the common, which is where it was held, and scoured the site, and I picked up everything, every piece of rubbish, every cigarette butt, every beer bottle, every whatever it was. It's time consuming, but you need to have a think about how you're going to make sure that all happens properly, because what will happen is, if the cleanup's not done effectively, or if the waste is not managed, or the toilets are not handled properly, you won't get permission to do the event again, or the local community will complain. And so you don't want that. If you want to keep it going as an event in the future, you need to have a think about how you're going to make that work. Promoting your event. Let's have a think about that, because once you've got all of those logistics in place, promoting it is often something that you've got to do well in order to get the people through the door. So how do you do that? Let's have a look at a possible matrix of activities or thinking that you can think about in terms of some of the communications activities. You need to, looking at that first column on the left, getting started, you need to set up a great landing page, do SEO for that event page, leverage opportunities via your sponsors, deploy email marketing really effectively. Pre-event, which is not the initial stuff, but making sure that these ducks are in a row. You need to get blogging by your own networks, by your own blog, or others that are in your network. Get content out there. Pre-event social media marketing is really important. Establish a hashtag, making sure that it hasn't been used before. Is it going to work? Is it short enough? Is it resonating? Spend some time thinking about that. Utilize video and visuals as well, photographically. And during the event itself, the third column along, maximize social media during the event. Keep it going via social media post-event as well. Don't just sort of stop the next day. There often is a lot of tail, if you like, to an event which you can then keep going. Remember, I know I'm referencing the Gundry Music Festival, but for days and weeks and even now, I'm the administrator of their social media, and a lot of people are communicating on Twitter and Facebook with suggestions for next year's festival in terms of acts. So you need to be responsive to those people, give them the respect of responding to them, and often that tail will last for months, if not just permanently ongoing. Post-event blogging is really important to think about, making sure that you use pictures and video from the event. You can tie that into blogs or into your social media. Post-event, as I said before, keep it going with post-event thank yous. Who do you need to email and thank? Gundry Music Festival literally sent out a letter of thanks the very next day to dozens and dozens of people. It's a reasonably big event for this community just outside of Canberra. Do a post-event wrap-up, email to the attendees, again, thank them. But if it's about a cause or you're trying to leverage something or you've asked government to do something, if there's an outcome or if there's something new, you can say, we've all came together in Parliament House last week for the X or Y event. It was great. It was a great success. We had 26 meetings. We met with the blah, blah, blah. And we're really optimistic about where this is going to go, and keep in touch with us via this, and that. You want to keep on engaging people. You don't just want to let them drop off and go, oh, that was good. What else? What's happening next? Give them a pathway to keep involved with you. Have a debrief about what you could do better next time. That's always important, rather than just sit there and go, oh, that was great. We got double the amount of people. Brilliant. And you just go out and have a coffee. Think about how you could have got it even better. How could you triple it next year? And I think, and we'll go into this in a bit more detail, but examine the data from the event itself. The new thinking in event management is really that, yes, it's great to have a successful event and get people there, but the data in terms of who was attending, where they came from, what they wanted, how they bought tickets, how they engaged at the event itself, what they bought, what they didn't buy, all of that data is there to be mined, and I think make sure that you use it really well. Make sure you use it to your advantage. So a landing page, I talked about that before, but the event landing page is often the sort of the basis of the event itself. It's the infrastructure by which everything else comes. It'll act as a hub for the event. It's your chance to tell guests what the event's all about, what they'll learn at the event or what they'll be doing, who'll be speaking or singing or whatever it is. Who will they meet? Who'll be there? Because people don't want to come to conferences, dinners, breakfasts, lunches. They think it's just going to be them and a bunch of other people who are boring. So you need to sort of talk up who might be there. Include a clearly identifiable registration form or ticket sales button, making sure that that's really easily seen. Sites like Eventbrite allow you to create a page and have a really easily identifiable registration form. They're very cost effective, particularly if you're a not-for-profit. It's a free site. I'm sure many of you have used it. Talked about measuring. Measuring and understanding your data is particularly important. We've got the ways and we've got the means to do it. Many events use Twitter and Facebook and Vine and YouTube and all of these wonderful sites, and it's all out. We're pushing it out there, but actually what's happening to it? Where's it going? Who's listening to it? Where are the ears? What are they doing? So, how are you going to actually understand that? It's becoming increasingly important to collate that really valuable social media content data to allow you to measure how the event has had a helping, how the data's had a helping hand in the event's promotion. It'll help you for the next time. It'll allow you to understand your networks and understand your stakeholders and your audience for ongoing engagement as well. PR and promotion, it's important, isn't it, to be able to talk about the event and get that out in the public, because not everyone's going to be able to be there. but you can still get a great positive bounce and some attention from the media from just some broad PR. The PR itself also brings in people, doesn't it? So, we can, use PR for both of those things. How do we drive it? Think really local as well as specialist and big picture or metros. So if it's an event and it's around the corner, who might come? And if it's an open event or it's people that you're wanting to buy tickets, people within a couple of 100 metres or a kilometre radius or a 2-kilometre radius are really likely to be one of your top targets. How do you communicate to those people? And here I'm talking public relations, I'm talking about communications here, not just necessarily paid media or gained media. It might be about, going back to basics, dropping a leaflet in their letterbox, standing on the street corner and handing stuff out, talking to them at a train station, going into schools and telling them about something that's coming up. However it is that you're going to communicate to people, you need to think about that and get that happening. Be targeted and be relentless. So you probably also want to get, if it's a particular nuanced event, you also want to think about getting some specialist publicity or, the big picture, metropolitan radio, TV publicity, if it's the sort of thing that you can gain publicity for in that sense. So, yes, there's a lot to do there, but, it's only going to assist you in terms of either driving the brand awareness for your own brand or, driving success and engagement with your campaign or mission or objective, and that's really what you're on about. Be creative. Think about deploying a stunt or some guerrilla marketing or PR activities. That also will bring in publicity itself. And if you don't know what guerrilla marketing is, I'm sure most of you do, just Google it. It's really a sort of subtle, it can be, it could be an expensive stunt, it could be an extraordinarily cheap stunt, anything from having something that's, increases the talkability of it. It needs to be in the right position. You then need to use it, take photos of it, spread that message in social media. It might be, something that you put, short video that you put on YouTube, or on your website, a whole range of things. Have a look at and think about the options that you might be able to deploy as a stunt or guerrilla marketing for those activities. It could help you enormously, particularly if you do something that's low budget. Being careful, of course, not to do anything that's going to get you into strife with police or whatever else, like abseiling off a very tall building. You probably require permission for that, but there is enormous potential. In terms of PR, follow up, and follow up. We all know that, and I've so often will, have feedback from clients who'll say, "Oh, yes, we sent the email to the media release to them, but we haven't heard anything," or we've left a message, but we haven't heard back. My husband works for the Sydney Morning Herald at the moment. He's actually in Paris covering the attacks, but he's a photographer, and he often, I'll look at his inbox and he'll have 883 unopened emails from people about stuff, and you can absolutely bet that he won't be opening up and giving his full attention to all of those things that are being sent to him. The only way to get him is just to keep calling often, or to get journalists is often to keep calling and not leaving messages, because messages can sometimes annoy unless you particularly know them very well. Often just calling back is the best way to approach it. And online media is a huge resource to tap into. Do not ignore it. It's absolutely there to be used. Now, moving on, before we conclude, and if anyone's got any questions, please do drop them in the box for me. There is lots of apps. If you search event management apps, there will be, or platforms, there is a lot of them. Eventbrite, for example, is online and it's an app. There is a lot of them. Some of these are some of the ones that I've come across that I think are useful. If you're working in a not-for-profit or an organisation and you need to gather together with people and ask them what the best date is for something, Doodle is a really good thing to use to allow people to, vote for when they think an event should be, based on either convenience or optimum date for whatever it is you're trying to do. A great platform is one of the ones that we've seen is something called Splash. It lets you customize your event, manage your own web, and it's a mobile optimized event page. It sends out invitations and it also can sell tickets. Eventbrite does that as well, but probably a little bit less customized. There are others in terms of ticketing. There's a whole lot of ticketing apps and platforms that tie into both having something on, your phone as well as online. But two of those are Tito.io or Eventbrite. Eventbrite's particularly well used. I just read something this morning that I think Eventbrite is now, their market cap, I think their turnover was 2 billion or 1.5 billion or something last year. It's phenomenal, whatever it is. And I'm sure the guys didn't think about that when they first set up. What I suggest you do is, there's a huge array of platforms and apps. Have a good look around, have a search, and see what it is that takes your fancy in terms of what it looks like. Some people prefer simpler platforms, more complex, certain amount of information or less. So you have a good look, and you will find both on your phone and online various apps and platforms that you'll be able to access. Some of them for free, some of them not for free, but there's an enormous amount of tools out there. If you just Google event management checklist or event management spreadsheet or whatever it is, you'll be able to take your pick of dozens of them to be able to download. So thank you very much for taking part in today's webinar. No one else has got a question at this stage, so we will just wrap up. We've got one more webinar before the end of the year because I thought it's timely going into 2016, which will be an election year, that we give some thought about planning for the election year. Who knows when the election will be? The Prime Minister's flagged it'll probably be October, but who knows? So I think giving some thought to that is probably a good thing to be doing in December, so that you can use this sort of December, January period to get your house in order, put out some requests for meetings, and think about the approach that you're going to take to engage and hopefully get some success and leverage on the run up to the election. So thank you so much for attending today and joining us. I look forward to meeting you again in the next webinar. Everyone will get sent the slides from today, and they'll also be available on our 50 Acres TV site. You can hear my small puppy in the background who's locked outside, but he's being noisy. So have a great day, everyone, and thanks again for joining us today.